going to kick this off. So today this is kind of a brief overview of the agenda. We'll be doing some quick introductions, kind of diving in about what does DXP, CXP mean, insights into what we're seeing in the marketplace, as well as some upcoming developments and room for additional Q&A. So good afternoon for most of us. I know we have some people visiting over in Europe as well as, coast to coast. Welcome to our webinar on digital experience platforms. I'm thrilled to have each of you joining us today, and I'm particularly excited because this webinar isn't just about sharing information, it's about empowering you to drive meaningful conversations within your organizations. As you know, the landscape of digital experience is constantly evolving, and it's crucial for organizations to stay ahead of the curve. Today, we're going to explore how your use of the Kinetic Data platform already contributes to the digital experience ecosystem and how this aligns with broader market trends. But we do not want this to be a one-sided conversation. We want this webinar to be a collaborative experience where you can actively participate, ask questions, and gather insights that will help you have productive discussions with your colleagues, managers, and leadership teams. So I encourage you to use the chat and QA features throughout the webinar. Whether you have burning questions, want to share your own experiences, or simply want to engage with our panelists, this is your opportunity to make your voice heard. Our panelists today will provide valuable insights into Kinetic Data's strategic direction and the evolution of our platform to address the pain points being seen in the marketplace. But this discussion isn't just us talking at you, it's about us coming together as a community to learn from each other and chart a course of success in the digital age. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. We'll start with you, John.
Hello, John Sundberg, founder of Kinetic Data, and I'm passionate about the world of customer experience, automation, and basically process improvement day after day.
Awesome. And I'm James Davies. I'm the COO at Kinetic Data. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of our customers, wearing many different hats over the course of my 10 years with the company. Also a big customer experience enthusiast, so excited for this conversation.
And hello, my name is Robert Duffner, I guess the newest member to Kinetic Data, but I'm responsible head of product at Kinetic, and I have about 28 years of experience in basically the evolution of digital experience platforms, going all the way back to the early days of CRM and portal frameworks.
Awesome. I'm really excited. Thank you guys for joining us all today to share your insights and experiences. From my perspective, I feel it's hard to reflect on where we are going without first understanding where we have been and where we have started. So John, I'd like you to kick us off. Can you provide a brief overview of the evolution of Kinetic Data?
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll make it brief. I could talk about the history for days and days, but basically when Kinetic Data started, I worked with a lot of organizations around the Remedy platform and getting that to more and more users, and basically kind of making the end user experience better many years ago by putting a web front end on the Remedy platform. And the idea with that was, by lowering the barrier to people using the system, then they could collect some data, route it through some processes, and then later make some intelligent decisions based on collected data. So started off doing a number of custom applications, saw patterns in the projects that people were asking for, which was really about making simple interfaces over and over again. And we kind of built like a It's now called low code, but back in the day, originally that it just wasn't the popular name, but the whole idea was sort of to simplify the creation of forms and processes, make beautiful front ends for complex back ends, and please the users so that they would use the system, and then a whole bunch of positives would come from that. We've, of course, improved our product over the time, but that was really the genesis, was to expand the user community to complicated business systems so that we could drive quality data and processes and good decisions on the back end.
Yeah, I can tell since having started here a few years that like user experience has always been at the heart of like the Kinetic data platform, really wanting to make sure everyone is having a really good experience and gets to where they need to go for their day-to-day work. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to pass this over to James to talk a little bit about what he has been seeing. Because like terms like digital experience and user experience, I mean, they're nothing new. A lot of us have heard of those terms before. But now there's like seems to be this pivot in the marketplace, like terms like DXPs, which are like digital experience platforms. So James, can you kick us off by explaining what exactly is the DXP and how did this come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the privilege of working with a lot of different customers in my role. And so what we're seeing is really encouraging from the market. We're seeing digital transformation, or many times it's called modernization, happening. But it's happening in functional silos. Within an organization, you have HR teams and IT teams and finance facilities, and they all have the need to digitize processes, kind of get up and out of email and out of passing around PDFs. And so they're implementing systems that are that help them get their jobs done within their functional area. And that's great. We at Kinetic believe that you should have best of breed systems within different functional areas. But that said, there's some side effects to modernizing in these different silos. And one of those is that many times processes cross between teams. A classic example of this is employee onboarding, right? Your HR team might initiate an onboarding process, but IT needs to be involved to provision a laptop, and facilities needs to set up their desk, and they all are using different systems. And so organizations are finding that there's a lot of inefficiency because they're having to start in one of these functional areas, again, HR, and then they have to, when the HR is done, they have to move to a different system or send an email off, and it's disjointed, and it's causing inefficiencies in the process. So that's one area that we're seeing customers desiring a need for a more centralized user experience. The other is that end users don't necessarily always know where to go. Within large, complex organizations, sometimes there's hundreds of different applications that they need to interact with. And so organizations, especially chief experience officers, are looking for ways to provide a single pane of glass, is kind of the classic buzzword that's been used. But this panel that's an entry point for no matter who you are, a single place to go that can then interact with that different backend platforms. And so we have to think, when we think about user experience, we have to think about the personas that we're serving. And so those personas might be customers or vendors. Sometimes it's citizens, if we're talking with a city that's providing a user experience to their population, employees and partners. And so what it looks like today is these employees and citizens, these different personas or end users, have to interact with these functional tools. That's kind of the problem I was just describing. And it gets quite messy. As you can imagine, it's riddled with complexity. And so there's kind of two ways that we see of solving this problem. The first way it would be to kind of pick one of these functional platforms. I'll call out, Jira or Workday or Salesforce or ServiceNow, one of those platforms, and say, let's make that the user experience layer. The challenge with that becomes that once you make those the user experience layer, you're now trapped into using that technology really forever, for the foreseeable future. It's extremely expensive. It's extremely risky to replace that user experience layer. And also those functional systems are really purpose-built for their functional areas. So I'll say Salesforce, CRM, ServiceNow, IT, Workday, HR. They're not necessarily built to be a user experience layer. And when you make them a user experience layer, not only were they not designed to do that, but you wind up customizing them, I'll say to the nth degree, which then makes them extremely painful to update over time. And so this is really the challenge that a digital experience platform helps to solve for. What a digital experience platform does is separate the user experience from your functional business systems that are behind the scenes. With many of the organizations we deal with, they have a lot of complexity behind the scenes, and the goal is to hide that complexity from your end users. And you can do that by choosing to employ a digital experience platform that allows end users to interact with that, and they can have a very customized, tailored experience for their user persona. And behind the scenes, interact with these different tools and stitch together these processes without customizing the underlying tools. And so ultimately, what's been really encouraging to us as a company is that this has kind of been our mantra since day one. Really, like the goal that we set out to solve is like, how do we provide a better user experience? And what we're seeing from the market now is RFPs or requirements come out. We do a lot of business with the Department of Defense. They're obviously a very complex set of customers. But just take a look at these two were within the last month, and there's been about 5 in the last 2 or 3 months. But they're talking about reusable architectures that separate systems into major functions, making complexity manageable, not being subject to vendor lock-in, allowing workflows and business processes to evolve separately from underlying transactional data, et cetera, creating automated workflows without customizing underlying source systems of software. The reason these requirements are coming out, we believe, is because they've experienced the pain of trying to go all in on one platform, and now they're seeing the value in decoupling that user experience. And so for us, this is encouraging, again, because we're kind of getting some pull from the market. As a small business, that's something that you always want, and it's something that we've built a platform to solve for directly. So that's what I'm seeing in the market. That's my perspective.
Yeah. Hey, James, I'm just going to jump in. I know we're a panel, and I think this the whole point is to jump in. But like, we live and breathe this stuff. We kind of say some words that people understand, they fly by, but some of these words are heavy. And like a specific one that I think of is best of breed. We like, we want to assemble best of breed systems, blah, 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 and we're on to the next sentence. But like, what really is that about? And if I go back to my early days of user interfaces, what was constantly the case is there's a new opportunity, a new use case of some sort where they need to basically assemble a process around onboarding some customers that transition from an old product to a new product, or bring a collection of people that are implementing software on Oracle and group them together and put some processes together from them. And like ultimately what happens in the businesses that we work in, we work with high volume, complex, compliant organizations and processes. But what you'll find out is process A to solve problem A is not the same for process B for the next group, et cetera. And you need a whole bunch of different processes to walk groups through a set of steps so that you end up with a quality goal. And you'll end up having hundreds and hundreds of these different processes. And that's kind of what we mean by best of breed is for the HR group that's dealing with international employees, they're going to have a set of processes. For the HR group that's working with interns, they're going to have a set of processes. And let them have the right processes for their job, so to speak. And then what happens is if you have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands over an organization, you now have a new problem of how do we bring somebody to a whole our process world and not give them new user interfaces each time, not have to deal with change records and change timeframes, et cetera. So best of breed is how you can get processes nailed down efficiently, effectively, and make your organization great. You do want to have many unique processes. And then you have this new issue of user experience and a layer for that. And that's what we've been kind of designed for forever. And it seems as if the last 5-10 years, people have been getting different SaaS applications for this, that, and the other thing. And next thing you have 10, 20, 30 applications, and you have 10, 20, 30 sets of licenses, logins, change records, etc. Putting an interface in front allows you to have best of breed and avoid a whole world of problems. So best of breed is a philosophy which we align to, and when we think it's the right thing for large organizations to become great at their processes. So
yeah, I guess piggybacking off of that just for a second too is one of the other, I guess I'll say, market trends that I've seen for organizations that have kind of chose the first path, kind of not the digital experience platform path, but consolidate into one platform. There's this drive to kind of keep everything out of the box. And to your point, John, organizations and departments and functional areas have their own processes that need to be tailored. So you wind up fighting the tool if you keep it out of the box and you can't get the most value out of it. So anyway, just another point in that all organizations are different.
Yeah, this is a panel. I'm going to ask questions. Why do people want to be out of the box? I'm a fan of why. I have good reasons. I know we discussed this, but we're trying to share. The reason people want to be out of the box is because their modifications become upgrade nightmares. So it's like, hey, let's not make any changes so that our upgrades become streamlined. Well, I can guarantee you that organization that wrote that software did not write the processes for you. So it's, hey, do we want to have the right processes or do we not? Do we want to make upgrades great or not? I was like, decoupling solves a number of these problems. So I agree with you. And there's weight behind these comments. So that's why I'm throwing out these questions. I hope you guys are all just having the greatest time of your life.
John, you're bringing up a really good point. It's something that I've been seeing over the last 18 months. Actually, Gartner nailed it in their Gartner trends for 2024. With regards to digital experience platforms, in that what I'm seeing customers do is think about how the buyer demand is continuously pushing DXP vendors, which includes James, all those apps we saw on your silo slide, pushing those vendors towards a decomposition and modularization of the technologies. And that's absolutely critical. And I'll talk more about that, but we're seeing that, and the consequence of that is, especially since we're not in zero interest rate policy economic environment anymore, everything's being scrutinized, including SaaS licenses utilization, unused, underutilized SaaS licenses. These things really, really add up. And this is why SaaS licensing rationalization is a big priority right now. It's not that necessarily they're trying to replace these apps. Just are they getting the most optimized use from it? Are we making use of all the licenses? So it's an interesting trend that dovetails, John and James, with what you were just talking about.
Agreed.
Now, I was just actually asking the chat, since you brought up decoupling. This was actually a newer phrase to me in the past few months. Do you guys want to quickly kind of break down what that actually means?
Yeah, effectively it means decoupling means basically decoupling the user interface from these functional systems. So like having, again, these best of breed or very great functional apps doing what they do and decoupling the user experience from them, because the user experience is really where most of your business process modifications and user experience modifications will happen. And having those separate from each other allows you the agility to move much faster in the future.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So correct. Decoupling means separation and putting, we'll call it areas of concern into tools that are quality at that. It's a little bit of the best of breed concept. And I sort of feel like one of the things that's happening in the industry right now is a migration from there's a SaaS app for every single thing, and you interact with each one of those to actually creating this UI layer, the users interact with that, then each functional area will say IT, HR, legal, customer support, engineering. They all have their sets of tools that make sense for their areas. I'll call them centers of excellence, but they do expose capability to the rest of the organization. And so there's this movement towards providing capability and services as APIs, which if you pay attention to Amazon, that was a big thing they kind of did 10, 15 years ago. Jeff Bezos said, hey, in order for one organization to talk to the next, we're not going to produce reports and send reports around. We're going to start exposing things as APIs. And it was like a significant change in how Amazon was able to process, because the way that an end organization wants to process the data is not always how the organization that produces the data produces it. So being able to munge the data and make it your data for your use case is what's needed there. So anyways, I sort of feel like these different areas are going to start having centers of excellence, and they expose their capability by way of APIs to a user interface layer, one. And then two, if you notice, take any out-of-the-box app and play with their reports. Oh, they're really cool in the demo world. And then you start using them and you go, shoot, I wish it grouped by location, not really just by state or whatever. They never work out for you. So they're tweak those, et cetera. The long-term strategy, in my opinion, is these different applications push their data into a reporting system of some sort. It could be Microsoft's reporting or Snowflake. That's one I've been paying attention later. And you can build the types of reports that make sense for you, not just from the HR data, but the HR and the IT data, and even potentially with the customer data, which none of those applications would have been able to do. So user interface, different silos having their great tool sets, exposing capability by API, pushing data into reporting layers. And then the last thing, I know, big chit chat about the world of AI, ML, if this is my opinion, But similarly, user interface across top, reporting, centers of excellence, and then an AI layer across the whole thing. So each tool having its own AI, like they're kind of doing now. Salesforce will have its AI, Workday, ServiceNow. Those are like local AIs that make sense for their local little world, which is not going to be relevant for the big picture. And because it's young days, the early days, it's kind of like the easiest way to get into the game. But the long term is going to be an AI that's, we'll say, kind of human-like. A human can look at multiple things and provide some value. So decoupling, UI, reporting, AI, and then different centers of excellence, I believe is going to be the application for the next 5 to 20 years. That'll be the architecture. And I will now get off my soapbox. I'm passionate. I said that at the very beginning, so.
Yeah, it was right there in your introduction. So yeah. All right, we're getting some good questions here. So I do want to take a moment to pull some of these out, and then Robert, I will circle back on what you mentioned briefly before. So we did have a question about are we currently seeing customers who are effectively replacing their front ends of some of their systems by having employees interact entirely through Kinetic?
Yeah, I'd say the answer is yes. What really Kinetic over time has evolved outside of providing this decoupled user interface for IT systems into now this decoupled interface across multiple ecosystems, not just IT, but also HR and others. And so I see one of our integration partners responded that we've been doing this for one of our DoD or federal customers. Recently, there's a number of customers that are on the call that are actually successfully doing this.
You know, I'm just going to jump in on that. If I listen to the question completely, it's, are they doing it entirely through Kinetic? Well, I would say no, just as a statement. The way this works is you start off with 2 programs, then 3, then 4. Maybe the goal long-term is complete usage through a UI type of layer, but this is not something that you do have to go whole hog on immediately. This is something that's able to be gradually introduced to an organization with the goal of eventually everything goes through a user interface. But that's kind of a key thing, is this is like adoptable safely, risk managed, and get some kind of quick value with some big hitters, and then you can bring in more and more and more. I just want to bring that in because it is something that you can adopt safely into organizations. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you said entirely end users, or entirely by end users. So typically it's the end customer who's consuming a service from someone that's going to be using a Kinetic portal. Whoever's doing that fulfillment would remain doing that fulfillment in their Jira's or ServiceNow or Salesforce or whatever those backend functional apps are. But the end users have a seamless view into that via a consistent user interface.
That's great. All right. And then this was also very interesting coming out of that conversation about decoupling. So decoupling and modularity are good for flexible design, but they force one to establish complex integrations. If not done properly, this could end up with a fragmented processes and potentially then bad data quality. Platform approach can compensate for a simple landscape and integrated data experience. How do you see these different arguments?
I'll jump in. I think they're great arguments. And the reality is I've jumped into a whole bunch of systems where it was all in one and it was a mess. So I can't exactly say that because you leave it in one system, you end up with a great solution. It definitely is the case that if you've got multiple backends, it does increase the need for integrations, and to do anything is more complicated than to do nothing. However, again, going back to philosophy, if it is the right approach for your organization to have specialization for the different areas, then that will, I'll say, outweigh the complexity or the challenges that integrations will bring along. Now, integrations has such a weight to it because I think a lot of us that are in the IT space have been doing it for 15, 20, maybe more years, right? And we deal stuff with SOAP and XML and crazy. But the reality is the world of integrations has gotten so much better in the last certainly 10 years, but 5 years with sort of the standards of JSON and the different querying techniques using REST, that these things are pretty solid now. So in terms of the actual integration, it would be like a mapping exercise, but the technology to support it is robust. That I think a lot of the fear of integration is a legacy fear more so than a current. I don't know if it answered all the parts of the questions, but I do typically get us questions around, the challenge of integrations, and I do believe that they've gotten solid. I know
it's a good point, John. I mean, when I think about this argument, that Kaklesh Sunil is bringing up, how do we reconcile these arguments? And for me, I believe the answer lies in making sure you take a strategic, balanced approach about understanding your core needs and strategic objectives to your business, and then thoughtfully selecting which aspects of those to modularize for flexibility and where to leverage platform coherence for efficiency. So in the case of modular components, John, I think you're right. I think investing in robust integration platforms and APIs can mitigate the risks of fragmentation. And that helps ensure that the decoupled systems can communicate seamlessly and maintain high quality integrated data. And on the platform side, it's about selecting vendors that prioritize interoperability and extensibility. And you really want to ensure that their integrated solution doesn't become a limiting solution.
Good point.
Thank you. All right, I'm coming back to you, Robert. So Robert, as our newest team member of Kinetic Data, you definitely come to us with some insider's view since the inception of SaaS. having been a product in product leadership roles at like Microsoft, Salesforce, ServiceNow. So kind of pulling this all together, how would you describe the changes we are seeing? Oh,
Well,
and I am.
Yeah, one of them for sure is, you know, kind of our economic situation is definitely a sort of a zeitgeist phenomenon in that, you know, organizations are looking at, you know, how they're going to start rationalizing all their SaaS spend. Like anything else, it gets out of hand. Just like, I mean, I can think of my own personal examples. How many streaming subscriptions do we have? How many of them are we using? It's always a very fascinating exercise when you actually start marking them all down. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm spending how much? And it's the same. It's the same thing that we see here. You know, and the other thing is, you know, someone who's been on the inside of Microsoft, and when we were working on pricing for Azure and pricing for the Salesforce platform when I was there in ServiceNow, what happens is, and again, this is a little bit of a insider's perspective. As they add more functionality to their SaaS platforms, you know, each of these groups inside these organizations a lot of times have their own P&Ls, so they have to come up with their pricing mechanisms, and so you get this effect, what I call license stacking, right? So you may have all your core licenses for the core applications that you're using, but then you keep adding more and more functionality, and you start getting this stacking effect. And what I want to do is just connect this to the point we were talking about, which is what can you do to gain more control, right? So we used to have this saying, and we used to use this internally. It was, whoever owns the glass collects the toll, right? And that's absolutely spot on. So what do I mean by the glass, right? I'm talking about the user interface, right? That's where all the front end magic happens for all your users. And then by toll, I mean, you know, the license, you know, potential license costs or dev seats required to build those front ends. You know, in the early days of ServiceNow and Salesforce, when they were gaining it, you know, John, you'd mentioned, you know, Salesforce was gaining massive adoption with, you know, the VP of Sales. You know, ServiceNow was gaining a lot of adoption with IT, with their ITSM solutions, those applications. One of the very first use cases in the early days of these platforms coming to market was kind of the first opportunity that they had to act as that glass layer was using either Salesforce or ServiceNow, depending on what your use case is, to basically be a front end layer to SAP, right? Because I didn't want to expose the complex UI to my end users, and that's really the challenge that we are really trying to address here. So the take-home message for you is, you know, where it makes sense, you should absolutely own your glass, right? This has nothing to do with shunning SaaS platforms, far from it. It's the guidance to you is be strategic, choose wisely to invest in that glass. And, you know, we recommend using, you know, using open source frameworks, you know, open source JavaScript frameworks like React, right? You know, for all these other SaaS platforms have all their idiosyncrasies when you're learning how to develop on them, right? But when you stick to the open source frameworks, you get a lot of predictability, and you can quickly ramp up. And we think that by you, the customer, owning the glass, right, then you control the ability to take the toll, but which helps on the cost side. But really, at the end of the day, you'll be able to build much better digital experiences, which is really the end goal.
You know, I'm just going to piggyback on that. I had a conversation with a large DoD organization just yesterday, and there were 3 key takeaways that I was kind of giving them, encouraging them to prioritize, and that is control over their interface, flexibility over their systems, and those things will give them the ability to negotiate with the vendors. And actually, like, part of decoupling is the ability to replace components. If you're providing APIs, and I'm making this up, we've got 5-10 APIs, and there's another application that provides those 5-10 at a better use case or better pricing or better speed, whatever, you can make that change. But that control that you get from the UI layer really sets you up for long-term flexibility, which I think for an IT organization is paramount. Because you're not just solving today's problems, you're really positioning yourself for 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, and to get your feet in some cement with some of these things just takes away opportunity. And I think that the wise thing is choice and flexibility and the ability to control your destiny.
Yeah, I think this streamlines really well into kind of my next question about like how does like taking on this approach by establishing a DXP or this layer for user experience, what are we really seeing in terms of like how will this impact agility and scalability for business operations?
I like to talk about, well, both of those. Scalability is an interesting topic. There's two parts that I personally think of when it comes to scalability. And that is certainly performance. We want a system to perform well and to, you know, it works great for 100 people, 1,000, 10,000, whatever. But the other part of scalability is horizontal in terms of we've got a good strategy for user interface. Can we use that across multiple projects, multiple organizations, et cetera? And that like multiple people participating in, or multiple organizations participating in a solution strategy is another wise thing to really consider in scalability. I know one of my earlier organizations that I worked at, if you look at my LinkedIn, where did I work at before Kinetic Data? You know, they had different teams in each organization that used different technologies, et cetera. And like for whatever reason, a project would get delayed 2 or 3 months. Those people were not able to be like transferred over to another project and then help that other project. They're kind of twiddling thumbs because they were using their, you know, unique technology, and being able to reuse technology across many organizations also gives you that flexibility to ramp up and ramp down teams efficiently within an organization. So that's scalability. Anybody else want to talk about agility?
I can just touch on it, just I guess based on some customer experiences that we've had. We've actually got a customer right now that's moving from the BMC platform for their IT system to ServiceNow. And because they have Kinetic or a digital experience platform sitting in front, that's a simple lift from a user experience perspective. They're not having to retrain all of their users, so they're able to be quite agile and swap out how those integrations work and where they point to without affecting everything. And so I think that's a testament, and a number of customers have gone through that process, to the agility that something like Kinetic brings, and the ability to make changes behind the scenes. We've all seen, you know, new CIOs or new leadership come in and say, hey, I'm going with my, you know, with what I know and what my stack has been in the past, and they can make those changes, but you're not causing the disruption and chaos by changing out the user experience. So that's my input just based on customer experiences.
Yeah, I'll just give another example. Organization that I was working with, quite frankly, they were doing very well, where they started acquiring additional organizations, and they were able to basically branch out to additional countries, quite frankly, gracefully. I guess you could say it that way. It was able to use their existing user processes, et cetera, and then start sending the records to European offices, or the European offices could be handled by America too. So that was like kind of an interesting outcome, was the ability for the organization to grow through acquisition, quite frankly, in a less disruptive way than a normal acquisition would be. So that kind of interesting agility scenario.
Yeah, maybe Robert, from your perspective, what have you been seeing from your outsider point of view?
Yeah, I think you know, if I could deliver one key take-home message is, I think for folks who, you know, are on this call, either, you know, have involvement with either enterprise architecture or actually full stack developers, or maybe manage full stack developers, really, really important that you have these types of conversations with your management chain, and be able to communicate the value of a modern, digital experience platform. Gartner calls it composable DXP. That's just another way of saying modern, right? And be able to articulate the benefits, right? So as you guys start to rationalize and look at your software platforms, understanding how having a modern DXP can help with business agility, rapid innovation. I mean, I can think of for sure cost efficiency, and the avoidance of vendor lock-in, enhanced user experience experiences, and then from a future-proofing perspective, technological adaptability, right? Again, it all gets down to that glass layer. So if there's anything we can do to help you in the future on this, let us know. We'd love to. This is stuff we think about every single day. It flows through our blood, and so if there's anything we can do to help make the case, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, I think that actually leads very well into the next question. What advice do you all have for our customers looking to leverage the full potential of Kinetic Data's digital experience platforms in their own organizations?
I think mine would be to probably to dream big. Think about things 10 years from now, not just I guess I'll say the fire in front of you. Sometimes there's an easy path that's not necessarily the best path that could pigeonhole you. And so the customers that have been thoughtful and strategic about where they want to go have been the most successful in implementing a digital experience platform. If it's an afterthought where you want to go, you wind up making mistakes earlier on that then wind up costing you money and time to get to where you want to go. And so a good example of that is, if my digital experience platform is scoped to let's say 1 or 2 functional areas, but my long-term goal is to have it across many functional areas, a DXP is the obvious choice and makes a lot of sense. But near term, it might be a quick win to kind of put that together in one platform, but now you're pigeonholing yourself. So I think just thinking long term and thinking out 10 years from now or even 20 years from now will help avoid a lot of pain.
How about you, John?
I always have comments. It ends up being a philosophical thing. I believe that organizations, if they really want to chase best of breed strategies, which is like a foundational decision within an organization, if they want to chase best of breed, they will end up with what we're talking about. They'll choose a Kinetic solution or something else, but they will decouple because it's the right thing to do for the long term. So ultimately, are you a best of breed or you want to throw everything into one solution and kind of have a vendor drive your decision world, which my experience is I try to make tomorrow a better day all the time, and you do that by getting in and tweaking things. And if you're just going to have the vendor tweak stuff, you're going to have to convince the vendor that tweak is good for everybody, which is not the case. So you're just not going to get the outcome that I personally am after, which is making every day a better day. So best of breed is the way to go. And if you're going to go best of breed, you'll end up with a digital experience platform like Kinetic eventually. So it's philosophical, and then it leads one thing to the next. We'll be talking in 5 years and everybody will be doing this. My prediction. Let me put it in my calendar.
Yeah, we'll revisit. We'll just set up this webinar where we repeat this and summarize it and see where we're at.
April 1st, 2029. We'll do it on that day. Hey, what's going on?
Okay, great. So we're getting here a little bit towards the end. One of the things is I do want to leave our people with a little bit of what's happening here at Kinetic and how we are really being influenced not only by like the marketplace, but what we're really seeing from our customers. And I think this really ties in with like the conversation about like integrations and things like that. Here at Kinetic, we are always improving. Our goal is, of course, to create better experiences, not only for your end users, but also for our builders, making it easier to do your job and making you shine within your organization. So some things that are coming up on our roadmap is something like some of you have probably heard, is like the integrator, which will we're currently building out to make it really easy to create your integrations and also test them all in one place. And then another one is what we're calling our bundle refactor, which, as John mentioned towards the beginning of this, helping our builders create beautiful front end experiences, even if you have complex backends. So everything we do is taking into account of market trends and also what our customers are saying. Do you guys have anything additional to add?
Yeah, Cassie, I wanted to add a layer to this just based on a couple of customer the interviews that we did a few weeks ago. Maybe James or John can address this, but the idea of, pre-built integrations, right, versus having something like integrator. Can you compare and contrast the approach? Because this definitely ties into some of the earlier questions we got here on this webinar.
Sure, I'll jump in. So as you're describing these, Cassie, I was kind of in my head basically describing them as it's the next generation of our integration framework. It's the next generation of our UI framework. And the thing is, we've been doing this for 10, 20 years, and we've had a couple of different generations of these in the past. And what's kind of cool is as these things will come in, our whole strategy is to, take advantage and decouple. So these can be adopted by our existing customers in a safe, managed way. I think that's an important thing. But basically, when we built our the current integration framework, SOAP was a really big thing. JSON was kind of like, hey, that's new, blah, blah, blah. That's when we built our existing integration framework. And the existing framework is excellent in the sense that it's very generically designed. Our customers can build integrations, et cetera, but it's a little bit lower level than is needed in today because the integrations have become so standardized today that we can build the next generation, and it's more of a selection capability and configuration capability than call it development per se. And so with the new integrator, it's just faster to build them. It's going to be easier to manage the systems. They're going to perform better, et cetera. And that's kind of the point of the integrator, is it's really kind of the next generation, because the world of APIs and integrations has gotten a lot better than it was 10 plus years ago when we built our current integration framework. Still extendable, all that important stuff. And then the same thing with call it the bundle refactor. The world of UI development is, leaning a lot towards React. That's part one. But the whole world of React is in my opinion, again, a philosophy. And so we've, recreated our bundle, taking advantage of that philosophy, and it's more extendable, higher performance, more of the single page, I'll call it single page apps, which is basically, we'll call it beautiful apps that a normal web developer who came out of a full stack camp or whatever, those types of people can get into Kinetic in that first week. They can build great stuff, versus if you were to try a Salesforce or ServiceNow or Workday, you got to build in those environments, and nobody comes out of a full stack camp able to do any of that type of stuff. So we're really leaning towards more standard, approachable technologies that are safer to develop in, easier to find people. I would claim faster, more robust, et cetera. But they're both next generation for us. They're big deals. So we'll be seeing both of those this summer.
So we have another question from the chat that feels like it's a good place for this question. So the question is that modern digital user experience is also a key agenda for some of the big known platforms like ServiceNow and BMC's digital workplace, or at least that's what our customers are hearing. So how does Kinetic stand out from those competitors?
This
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. This really gets back to the comment I made about whoever controls the glass, right, controls the toll. Probably one of the biggest differences is generally the SaaS platforms that are, a lot of them are not rebranding, but definitely playing up the digital experience aspect of it, just because that's a key trend. It's something that organizations are spending money on, number one. But to me, the most obvious one, if I had to give you the biggest one, it would be that from a Kinetic platform perspective, we're built on common, widely used technologies, including open source frameworks. So we use this term internally where we are unopinionated when it comes to what you choose as your technology for the front end. We'll work with that, right? Because we work with all these common open source JavaScript frameworks, and you already have people in-house that are already trained on these, so no additional training is necessary, and you don't have to deal with the individual idiosyncrasies of SaaS platform development with their platform tools.
Another quick angle, and again, I think this is an area that, so Kinetic Data, I wouldn't say competes directly with these other platforms that we've been mentioning. Again, the common ones being Salesforce, ServiceNow, et cetera. But there is definitely an area of overlap in the customer experience lane. I would say a big difference between Kinetic and those platforms is when you buy the customer experience from them, you're buying a module or a SKU on top of their platforms, and they're setting that up. They're pre-configuring it with a bunch of stuff that they've built as a vendor, as a SaaS platform, and then it's being extended and modified by your organization to meet your customer experience needs, which puts you back into that same technical debt boat of modifying something that a vendor's provided and then having to constantly keep it up to date. And so what Kinetic is doing, we're providing a framework for building these customer experiences, not modules that we're selling pre-built that you're configuring, but we're providing the raw underlying lowest common denominator. And then when we update our platform, we're not touching your workflows, we're not touching your UIs, we're not touching your integrations. Those things all stand. So that's one of the big ones. And then another one that comes to mind is just fundamentally and philosophically for us, the business model is very important. We believe for a digital experience platform, all users should be welcome, and charging per user makes it cost prohibitive to really scale those platforms. And so our business model is not per user. We can kind of take that conversation offline if you want to dive deeper, but it's an important distinction when you're looking at, again, 10 years from now, what's this cost going to be to achieve my vision?
Actually, James, this is a big one, man. I hear customers talking about all this time. It's really, there's kind of two primary billing models, right? Pay for consumption versus pay for privilege, right? And we take a pay for consumption approach, which again, as you guys know, it's akin to paying for exactly how much water you use or in your home or electricity you consume. And then pay for privilege is more of, typical SaaS license is like having an all access pass to a theme park, right? You pay a fixed fee to access the software regardless of how much or how little you use it. That's another big area of differentiation.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, lastly, I'll just say one more thing. Architecturally, we were built specifically to be a digital experience platform. We weren't built to be an ITSM or a CRM tool and then evolved into that. So architecturally, this kind of can get into the weeds, and we'd love to geek out over this, but how we structured our data behind the scenes to achieve maximum performance, which is required for a digital experience platform, or else you won't get adoption. All of those kinds of things, I think, will factor into it once you start peeling back the onion.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we're getting here to the top of the hour, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing your thoughts. I hope it has been a great opportunity and learning experience for our all our people here today. So thank you all for coming to our webinar. If you do have additional questions, feel free to email, message us, ping us on LinkedIn, send us a carrier pigeon, whatever. We are happy to reach out and discuss at any point. Hopefully everyone thought this was great because we have other webinars coming up on the schedule here. So look for your email for more information, but you've heard the term bundle during this meeting today, but what does that even mean? What is it? So we have demystifying the bundle will be coming up later this year. We'll be diving in about the integrator. For those interested in developing your own customer portal, if you don't have one already, or want to share with your friends how to make one, that will be one. And then I think something that really resonated here is the fact that a lot of the things we do is a philosophy. There's a framework to think about. Everyone has business processes, but how do we really translate that into code? So that will be one of our final webinars of the year. So I hope it's as exciting to everyone here as it is to us.
Hey, Cassie, will we be making the this webinar available?
Yes.
Recording?
Yep.
Awesome.
So this will be available tomorrow. So look for your email for those that attended, and we'll give you the ability to share it with everyone far and wide.
Thanks all.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.